documentary Queendom profiles a young performance artist who dares to challenge Russia's laws against queer expression. I'm Thom Powers, and this is Pure Nonfiction. At the center of Queendom is a non-binary artist in her early 20s named Jenna Marvin. She's a striking figure with a shaved head and elaborate makeup, dressed in outfits of her own design that veer into science fiction. Just Google Queendom documentary to see what I mean. Jenna grew up in Russia's Far East, raised by her grandparents in a former gulag town called Magadan. In Queendom, we meet her prior to February 2022, when Russia escalated its war on Ukraine. We watch her venture out into public in her eye-catching costumes, both in Magadan and in Moscow, where she attends school. Under Vladimir Putin, Russia has grown increasingly hostile to the queer community, so Jenna's simple act of walking the streets or riding the subway in costume puts her at the risk of arrest and violence. When the war escalates, her art becomes even more political. She deliberately ventures out in provocative attire on a day celebrating the military. Another time, she wraps herself in barbed wire and walks across a Moscow bridge until she's finally arrested. She eventually goes into exile in Paris, where she finds new methods of confrontation. Near the end of the film, we see her walking the streets, practically naked, appearing drenched in blood. All of this is captured by the filmmaker Agniia Galdanova, who put herself at risk and was forced into exile in the process. When Agniia was trying to fund her film, she sent a sample to the American documentarian David France. He had covered Russia's queer community in the film Welcome to Chechnya. David showed the sample to Igor Myakotin, who grew up in Russia and now lives in New York. Igor discovered he had a surprising connection to Jenna that comes up in this interview, and he signed on as a producer. The film premiered last year at South by Southwest and played many other festivals. It was named to the Doc NYC Shortlist and is now on the Oscars Shortlist. Last week, Agniia and Igor were in New York, where I interviewed them by Zoom. I started by asking Agniia what she was trying to achieve when she set out to make Queendom.
Yeah, so Queendom is my second feature. My first feature was my thesis in a Russian documentary film school, and there was very strict rules that your first film has to be done entirely by yourself. So I was directing, producing, filming, editing, everything by myself, which was tremendous experience. But when I started Queendom, I decided that I'm not going to film it myself because, and it was also a very new experience for me to work with the cinematographer, which, add a lot of more complication, schedule-wise and so on. But I understood very fast that the world that we're entering is it's so beautiful that I just don't have enough skills to capture it in the way that it has to be captured. So that was one of the things that I definitely changed. But also, I'm coming from the school, it's called Marina Razbeshkin Documentary Film School, which has this idea that it doesn't need to be perfectly filmed as long as the story stands on, the story is very strong. So I decided to try to combine both, and also decided to break some other rules, like to bring music on board. Because in the school, we've been told that music is something that manipulates the emotions of the viewer. But somehow I feel that we kind of nailed it, because the music is so subtle. And that was also one of the things that I tried for the first time, and I think it worked.
So you were coming from this kind of purist educational approach, and you were looking to bridge that with a different kind of artistry in the film, is what I'm hearing. Well, Igor, let me shift to you. you had worked on Welcome to Chechnya that came out in 2020. And my understanding of brief conversations we've had over the years is that the risks to safety of working in Russia became too great for you to keep operating in the country. So please clarify if I understand that correctly. But and can you describe where you were in your career when you first saw the footage that Agniia was showing of Queendom?
Yes, I worked on Welcome to Chechnya as a co-producer, and that film really prepared me for working on Queendom in terms of handling security and really getting to know Russia from a very different place.
And so I understand correctly, on Welcome to Chechnya, you were working on the ground inside Russia as a co-producer.
No, I was working in the U.S.
Okay,
out
got
of the
it.
New York office. But my first task was to prepare security and safety protocols to move the footage across borders safely in encrypted ways, and as well as to protect people on the ground, working with security consultants. And so that was a very incredible, useful experience coming into Queendom. And when Agniia was looking for a producer, she had already been filming and she had a sample edited. David Franz, the director of Welcome to Chechnya, who's our executive producer on Queendom, connected Agniia and I. And all he did was he just sent me a sample that Agniia put together. It was 10 minutes. And I was watching it without any expectations. And I'm looking at it and I'm mesmerized by the beauty of cinematography, by Jenna, how courageous and incredible she is. But I'm also seeing my hometown in that footage. And when I saw that, I was just shocked. I told Agniia, she was shocked as well. And we knew in that moment that it was destiny, that we had to work together.
So can you just flesh out for me how remarkable coincidence this is? The town you're talking about is in the far east of Russia, and as I understand it, an 8-hour time difference away from Moscow. It's a town that used to be home to a gulag. So tell me more about your experience growing up in this town and what you saw in the film.
You're right. It is 8 hours away from Moscow, 8 time zones away from Moscow. It's right in the Pacific Ocean across Alaska, near China, up north. Very cold and isolated. It's a beautiful place, nature-wise, but it's got this dark past, this dark history of labor camps, gulag camps. And the town was built by the prisoners. And most of them were just artists, people speaking the truth about the regime. And they were sent as far as possible to the other side of the country. The road that takes you out of Magadan is called Road of Bones, because people who were building it, a lot of them died just doing that, just because of the extreme cold. And growing up there, it felt like you were not even a part of Russia. You were somewhere on an island. When we say we would go to Moscow, we would say we're going to the continent. So we even considered Moscow as a different continent. And growing up there as a young gay boy, I never saw anything queer, anything LGBT. No one was openly gay. So I was very much closeted, and I thought, okay, I'm going to have a wife and a kid. And like a lot of my peers were talking about their dreams. And so when I saw that there's someone like Jenna in that town, that is, for me, was such a spark of hope for the future generations, and just knowing what this place is and what she's doing there, for me, that was extremely courageous. So I was immediately in awe, just seeing what she's doing and what she will do.
So Agniia, you met Jenna as I've read, you were thinking about a project that would look at a variety of drag queens in Russia, but when you met Jenna, she was so extraordinary. You kind of knew that she was the subject of a film exclusively. Now, I mean, here we're talking at the very end of 2024. It's hard to think back more than 3 years ago. When Russia's escalation of war in Ukraine started, and what the kind of framework was in Russia at that time. I mean, can you describe when you were embarking on this project before the war had begun? Things were already very difficult for anyone queer in Russia, although it's gotten, as I understand it, even more difficult now. So what were the state of things as you were embarking on the project?
Well, when I even started to think about this project, I was still living in Berlin and was a part of, queer community there. And when I came back to Moscow, my first idea was to explore what's happening in my home country. And back then it was way better than now, because now the situation is horrible. But already at that time, and we're speaking about 2018, 2019, there were a lot of clubs and a lot of, places where people could, get together, but everything always was behind the closed doors. And, thinking about the historical path, when the USSR fell down, and in 1993, there was some kind of liberalization of anti-LGBT laws. But when you see like the timeline, it's just from 93 to 2013 when, Putin created this first step, law saying that there is no more LGBT propaganda among minors. So we're speaking about this like freedom moment only for 20 years, which is nothing, and we were lucky to kind of, have this glimpse of this freedom, but it's very fast, shut down, because today any kind of, LGBT representation is banned in Russia. You basically are not allowed to leave.
That's a even stricter law that's been passed since you began working on this project.
Yes, so 2 years ago, they created this extension of the law. So now the LGBTQ propaganda is banned among everyone. So now
and any expression of queerness is defined as propaganda and is outlawed.
Now it's not even just a propaganda; it's defined as extremism. So basically terrorism. So today in Russia, for any kind of queer person or transgender, it's absolutely impossible to live. You cannot get the medical care. You cannot change your gender marker in your documents, and simply you cannot just express yourself. You cannot walk on the street as what Jenna was doing in the film. Now it's absolutely impossible to do even half of it.
So when we meet Jenna in this film, she's in her early 20s, and she refers to herself as 22. She is leading this kind of performance art, going out in public, dressed in eye-catching outfits. They'd be eye-catching anywhere, but even more so in Russia, and even more so in the small town of Magadan. She's a person of extreme defiance, in defiance of all of the society around her, has a contentious relationship with her grandparents, who raised her. I wonder how you experienced that defiant aspect of her character.
Well, I have to say was never easy. First of all, we were all amazed by what she was doing in terms of art, because when we met, she was still, let's say, calling herself a drag queen, but she never fitted in the drag queen community in Russia because she was never doing, like, so to say, conventional drag. So very fast I realized it's not drag, it's art, because she would sit for hours and hours building something from the pile of garbage, and suddenly you can see like a beautiful headpiece, or I don't know, some kind of creature that you would not imagine in any of your dreams. And then what she was doing with this was incredible, because she never had a fear of going out. We had a very funny story. Our cinematographer, who is straight, was always questioning, like, what is this? It's not such a big deal, you put the makeup, high heels, and you go on the street. And then she was like, well, if you think it's not a big deal, let me do your makeup for you. And you go and film, one of the scenes like this. And he was like, bragging around, saying, okay, let's do it. So she did the makeup for him. And at the moment when we had to leave the house, he was like, I cannot go out. I'm too scared. So he had to wash his face. And then what is great about him, he kind of like, reflect on that and said, yes, I understand that it's not something simple what you're doing. It's a very important and very brave act of, resilience.
Well, I think of myself as someone who has a great respect for outsiders, for people in protest, for people who are challenging conventional norms. And yet, even for me, watching Jenna feels like an extreme when she's out there doing this, because it feels it's a form of art, it's a form of protest. It's not a conventional protest like taking out a sign and that might say queer rights or stop the war. It's this more unconventional protest of going out in the world in a way that leaves open what she's trying to do to interpretation. I mean, I wonder if you can unpack some of that of what part of this is art, what part of it is protest, is it? Am I even asking the wrong question by trying to separate those things?
Yeah, I think it goes hand by hand, not only in Jenna's case, but in many other artists' case. And sometimes I was really scared for all of us. First of all, for Jenna, for example, when she decided to go and to challenge paratroopers, when they were celebrating their holiday. We were against it, and she said, well, I don't care, like, I'm not doing it for you, I'm not doing it for the film, that's my statement, and I want to, like, if I don't care what kind of day is it, if I want to dress up today like this and go there, I'm gonna do it, and you can follow or not. And what we had to do, just to follow. But I was scared that we're gonna get killed, because these people are absolutely uncontrollable. But on the other hand, when we were doing performances, and this was a kind of like collaboration between all of us, Jenna would always have an idea, and we were trying to find the best way how to execute it. It felt like we're doing some kind of, piece of art together. And when I was watching it afterwards in editing, it was so powerful, So in this piece of art, anyway, you feel that there is a, resistance and, fight against, norms.
And if I can just chime in and for this about this, just to say that Jenna's art was not political from the very beginning, and it was a gradual process. And I feel like artists like Jenna have no other option in a country like Russia, in a regime that was getting stricter and more dangerous for their art to be political. Jenna simply did not have a choice. Knowing who she is and being who she is, I felt like it was inevitable that her art was going to be political. And I think over time she also realized that she has this platform that she never had before. And I think she was also thinking, how can she use this platform? So I think it was a beautiful mix.
And by platform, do you mean the film that Agniia was making?
No, not the film, but the following that she started to have online.
The following she had on social media.
On social media, yeah. She didn't have it at first, but over the course, when Agniia met Jenna, she didn't have such a big following, but over the course of the film, she gained that following. And so she wanted to use that platform for something else rather than just looks. And I think there's a beautiful parallel between like art, cinema, films, watching art, and also watching Jenna and what she's doing. I feel like it affects people on a very subconscious level.
Well, Igor, I read an interview with you where you said a difference between your experience growing up in Magadan and Jenna, who's younger than you, is that she had access to social media. She could see a different world outside that was less visible to you when you were growing up.
Yes, that's correct. I had dial-up internet. I couldn't watch YouTube. We had a local network in town. So in order to watch movies, people would go to Moscow and then download movies there, then bring them on a hard drive and upload them onto our local network. So watching those movies on the local network was the only way for me to see movies, except movie theater, but they didn't have good selection there. And so I never saw anything, I was not exposed to anything LGBT. And that's why I told to myself, I have to work on this project. So someone like me who's growing up young and queer, not really knowing what to do. So when they watch this film, they would be like, okay, there's nothing wrong with me. Look at Jenna, look how fabulous she is. And look where she's coming from. It doesn't matter where you come from. Even from a small town like Magadan, you could still shine your truth and speak your truth and live, your life to the fullest and be honest with yourself, first of all. Because I was lying to myself that, I'm not gay, I don't know what it is. And that it's traumatizing. And I could have had a different childhood if I had access to the internet. But because Jenna had that access, I think that allowed her to see the world a bit differently, to see that the world is bigger and that there are people like her, like-minded people out there.
I mean, I hear from you, Igor, and you, Agniia, and from Jenna in the film, how important it is to be communicating to a Russian society and particularly to Russian youth. You're all now living outside the country. Can you talk about this? This moment in time of being separated from the country and the people that you would like to most be communicating with?
Well, in our case with Jenna, because everything what's happening to her in the film happened to me as well. When we decided to go out and protest against the war in Ukraine, it was just 3 days later after the full-scale invasion happened. And we knew that we're going to get arrested. So we prepared as much as possible because it was end of February, it was freezing cold. Jenna was almost naked, wrapped in the barbed wire. So when she got arrested, I made everything possible to get arrested as well and to be in the same car with her. And after that, we had a trial. And after the trial was clear, especially in Jenna's case, that she has to leave the country. but we never, we never planned it. We never wished for it. Everything was just, coming from our hearts, because beside that we were filming everything, the main idea was to, kind of make a statement that we're against what's happening and what our country is doing to another country. So it was hard. I mean, during the process of making a visa for Jenna, finding tickets, leaving the country, we were like really, really high on adrenaline. But when we landed in our new home, it hits everyone in a different way. But it was, for me personally, it was difficult to realize that somebody decided for me that I have to leave my country. I never asked to live in Paris, which is an incredible city, but it was difficult to process. And we are very lucky, that we're in France. It's been very generous to us. Jenna has now all the papers sorted out, so she can travel, she can work. But in general, just every day I'm like, waking up and thinking like, why can I go back home? Why I cannot see my mother anytime I want to see her? And same for Jenna. So it is difficult, but manageable.
What is your ability to communicate with people back home? And I don't just mean, communicating with your mother, but I mean communicating as an artist. I understand that there's no pathway for Queendom to be distributed officially in Russia, but I can imagine that there are ways for it to, be pirated or circulated in that way. How much are you thinking about that?
Well, we were thinking about that all the way because for us, one of the main goal was that Queendom is available in Russia and for Russian-speaking audience, which was more and more difficult to do while they were, inventing more laws. But it's available. You can watch it for free. You just need to download the VPN. And you can watch it in Russia and all the neighboring countries around, which are Russian speaking. And I think, we're never gonna put in danger anyone, on the ground and to make any kind of secret, screenings there, because people who would organize it there in Russia now immediately would be in danger, spreading propaganda. But online, people can watch, and I think at least like this, we achieved one of our main goals, just to reach out to, Russian queer community, for whom from the very beginning the film was, created.
Igor, earlier today I was talking to Ibrahim Nashat about his film Hollywood Gate, and he was describing how important Jess Search was to his film. Jess Search was also a supporter of Queendom. Can you talk about what she meant to this project?
Yes, Jess was everything to Queendom, and I feel like we wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if it wasn't for Jess. She came on board early on, and she was the most vigorous supporter from the very beginning. A true activist, visionary, but also very caring. And she really thought through, all the noise, and she knew exactly what to do. And she would always encourage us to go out and do it. And she would meet us, introduce us to so many people. She loved Jenna. She met Jenna. And the first time when Agniia met Jess was at CPH Docs, when Agniia was pitching the film at the forum right after she fled with suitcases Russia, and at the same time as Jenna was fleeing Russia. So all that moment was very emotional. Jess was moderating that pitch, and after the pitch, I woke up at 3 a.m. in New York watching Agniia pitch, and then Agniia later told me that it was so emotional that Jess saw that, and she saw Agniia and she said, "You need a drink. Let's go." And that was the beginning, and we really became a part of the family. We miss her dearly, and this project is we know it meant a lot to her, and she really does mean a lot to us.
Agniia, is there anything you want to add in your personal experience with Jess?
Oh, yeah, that's as Igor said, we met on stage at CPH Docs, and I was in such a high level of stress because I never performed it in front of such a big audience. And Jess was very generous. She let me talk as much as I needed to talk. And as Igor said, after that, because exactly in the moment when I was on stage speaking about the film, Jenna was crossing the border. And in the end of my pitch, I said to all these people, I said, and right now, Jenna is like crossing the border between Russia and Turkey. So let's all hope that, it's going to go well. And that was the end of my pitch. And for the next, 2 or 3 days that I was walking in Copenhagen, anywhere, there were people stopping me and saying, "Did she make it? Did she make it?" And with Jess, yes, that was our first meeting. And we went for this drink. And after this drink, we would talk every day on the phone and meet. She was coming to Paris with Beatty and with their dog. And I don't know, it felt very as family because as we lost the ability, to see our own families, that was very important at that moment. I really cherished that meeting, and I believe that Jess is still, supporting us from up there and, watching and sending her love to us.
As I wrap this up, I want to ask about, where Jenna is now. It's very striking to me at the near the end of Queendom, when she's gotten out of Russia and she's in Paris and she's walking the streets of Paris, and I was thinking that if she carried off some of the performance arts that she was doing on the streets and the subways of Moscow, and she did that in Paris, it would get a much different reaction, or maybe a non-reaction. Walking down the street in Paris in an outlandish costume is not as exceptional as it would be in Moscow. So I wonder what that has been like for her to be in a place where her self-expression, might feel more normal, and in general where she is today.
Yeah, well, speaking about the performance, that was one of big questions that she was asking herself, and I think it was first time in her life that she had this time just to reflect on what she wants to do next, and how she would, explore more like different mediums of art. But nevertheless, she's keep doing performances, and I was filming one of them. It was in Paris on Champs-Élysées after a huge football match, and she was more clever than before. She built up the costume in a way that if something would happen, she was kind of protected with the big belly and the big ass. And when we went, in the crowd, and it was huge, there was no more cars, there was only people and mostly men. She told me, don't do anything, don't interfere, even if something is going to happen, let me handle it. So I was just filming, and progressively it was more and more violent because she doesn't really understand what people say in French, but I do. And first it was just, what is this? Oh, what is this? And then people start to be more angry. somebody pushed her, somebody slapped her, somebody kicked her, she fell down on the ground. They would circle her and like laughing, I don't know, put the firecracker in her belly. And it was horrible. And, after that, I was like, okay, we're in France and it's supposed to be much more tolerant and nice, but it's not really happening. And that made me think a lot, like, everybody think that all this horror is happening in Russia, which is so far away and nobody would ever go there and it's going to stay there, but not at all. It's already here. And we witnessing it actually every day, how it's getting worse and worse. Not only in Europe, but I believe in USA as well.
So this defiant streak that we witness in the film is not just about her relationship to Russia. It sounds like she has this will to put herself in the most intolerant situations possible and be a provocateur. And do I understand correctly that's continuing, that continues to be part of her future, is to try to create those moments of social friction in a way?
Well, I think this fight is not over, and for sure it's not only about Russia. When we were thinking of how to finish the film, we had different versions of performance for the end, and we all decided that this would be the most appropriate because, for none of us, the immigration is, that we arrive in some kind of like fairy tale. So that for me personally, it was very important to, in the end of the film, to not give a viewer, this false feeling that, oh, she arrived and everything is going to be fine now. Not at all. And also, blood, it was Jenna's idea, and I think it represents so much like what's, Russia is doing to Ukraine, but also what Russia is doing to her own people. And you can dig for all kind of meanings in this performance, but for Jenna, it was also important to, to not, it's not the end, just a new beginning.
I want to thank director Agniia Galdanova and producer Igor Myakotin. Queendom is available on demand from Amazon, Apple, and other platforms. We've now interviewed 13 of the filmmakers on the Oscars shortlist, with more to come this week. January will be a busy month for us, including extensive coverage of the Sundance Film Festival in our newsletter written by Bella Racklin. You'll find the newsletter Doc Voices on Substack. If you want to advertise to our 40,000 readers, send an email to listen@purenonfiction.net. Thanks to our team, series producer Hannah Nordenswan and web designer Cross Strategy. Our theme music is composed by Andre Williams, and our executive producer is Raphaela Nehausen. I'm Thom Powers. Follow us on Instagram and visit our website at purenonfiction.net.